Welcome to our new video. I hope you all are well. Let's talk about whether should you upgrade to the iPhone 14. Apple's new iPhone 14 lineup is now on sale, except for the iPhone 14 Plus, which arrives on October 7. With a new generation here, you might be wondering if it's time to upgrade. The answer largely depends on which phone you currently have. If you have a recent model like the iPhone 13 or 12, you can afford to wait. If your phone is older though, it's worth figuring out how much you'll gain by jumping to a newer iPhone. The $799, 849 pounds, 1,399 AU dollar. iPhone 14 brings modest improvements that are appreciated but not game-changing, like nitty-gritty camera improvements, car crash detection, and the support for satellite-based emergency messaging. Hopefully, you'll never be in a situation where you'll need to use the latter two. The iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max upgrades are more dramatic, but you still don't need to upgrade unless you can score a great trade-in deal. Apple saved its most interesting new features for the Pro lineup, including the dynamic island that replaces the notch, the newest 16 bionic processor, and a 48-megapixel main camera sensor. If you prefer larger phones, you may want to wait until Apple releases the iPhone 14 Plus before making your decision. It's important to remember that you don't have to buy the iPhone 14 to get a camera, battery, and performance improvements over an earlier iPhone. The recently discounted $699 iPhone 13, or the smaller $599 13 mini, could be a good option if you still want more storage, faster performance, and an improved camera, especially if you are coming from a phone that's 3 years old or more. It's also the only option if you want the smaller mini and its 5.4-inch screen, since the iPhone 14 line eliminates that size in favor of the new $899 iPhone 14 Plus with a 6.7-inch screen. Purchasing decisions will always vary depending on budget, how well your phone works right now, and your personal needs, so there's no simple answer that works for everyone. But here are the biggest differences between the iPhone 14 lineup and previous iPhone generations to help you make a decision. Subscribe to the channel if you want to update always and grow our channel. iPhone 14 versus iPhone 13, 13 Pro, 13 Pro Max. The iPhone 14 lineup introduces new features such as car crash detection, the removal of the physical SIM card for US phones, and enhanced cameras on the rear and front. Despite those changes, iPhone 14 isn't different enough to justify upgrading from the iPhone 13. And even though Apple finally got rid of the infamous notch in the Pro models, the 14 and 14 Plus still have one. It's the same smaller notch that debuted on the iPhone 13 series. The iPhone 14 represents one of the most minimal year-over-year upgrades in Apple's history, according to CNET's Patrick Holland, who reviewed Apple's latest phones. The iPhone 14 and iPhone 14 Plus have the A15 Bionic chip from last year's iPhone 13 Pro and iPhone 13 Pro Max. The 14 screen looks exactly like the one on the 13. Perhaps the most prominent change this year is the introduction of a larger version of the iPhone 14 called the iPhone 14 Plus, which has a 6.7-inch screen like the Pro Max. That means you no longer have to splurge on Apple's most expensive iPhone if you want the largest screen possible. Of course, the iPhone 14 is still highly rated, but we recommend saving your money and skipping the upgrade. If you've made up your mind to upgrade, we suggest going for an iPhone 14 Pro or iPhone 14 Pro Max if you can afford it. These phones are expensive, but buy you access to some salient changes, namely a high refresh rate display, Apple's new Dynamic Island multitasking bar, an always-on display, as well as better cameras among other features. The bottom line: if you have an iPhone 13 or 13 Pro, don't upgrade. But if you are determined to get a new phone, go for the iPhone 14 Pro or 14 Pro Max, especially if you must have the Dynamic Island right now. iPhone 14 versus iPhone 12 Pro. Even though the iPhone 12 arrangement was delivered quite a while back, they share numerous similitudes with Apple's most recent telephones. Both the iPhone 12 and iPhone 14 help 5G, run on quick processors, offer incredible cameras, and incorporate MagSafe embellishment similarity. Since the iPhone 14 is all the more a revive rather than a significant overhaul, we suggest clinging to your iPhone 12 if it's still in great shape. You can exploit the iPhone's most recent programming elements, for example, lock screen customizations, gadgets, and the capacity to unsend instant messages by moving up to iOS 16. The iPhone 14 got a couple of outstanding camera updates, similar to a bigger sensor, another focal point with a quicker gap, further developed photograph handling, and activity mode, which makes the developments in recordings look smoother when you record them. In any case, the iPhone 12's cameras stay phenomenal, even though they are 2 years of age. The iPhone 12 has a 12-megapixel double camera framework, while the iPhone 12 Genius incorporates a third camera with a zooming focal point. Look at our iPhone 12 audit to perceive how the cameras held up when CNET put them through the speeds. It merits recollecting that you get more recognizable updates with the iPhone 14 Star and Expert Max. These incorporate all that is new in the 14, as well as an overhauled fundamental camera with a bigger 48-megapixel sensor, an ultra-wide camera that permits you to take full-scale photographs, and a third camera with a zooming focal point. If you can get a decent exchange bargain that fundamentally thumps down the iPhone 14 Master's cost, overhauling from the standard iPhone 12 is a respectable move forward. The main concern: clutch your iPhone 12 for one more year since the iPhone 14 isn't decisively unique. Nonetheless, the iPhone 14 Ace and 14 Expert Max bring more huge changes that could be advantageous if you can catch a decent exchange bargain. iPhone 14 versus iPhone 11 Expert. Assuming that you're utilizing an iPhone 11, we prescribe moving up to an iPhone 14, or even an iPhone 13. Over the most recent 3 years, Apple has rolled out an adequate number of improvements to highlights including battery duration, execution, screen quality, cameras, and solidness to justify purchasing another iPhone. Moving up to the iPhone 14 will get you 5G help, more capacity, 128 gigabytes at the base level versus 64 gigabytes, a superior principal camera with a more extensive gap focal point, new video shooting choices like activity mode and realistic mode, a superior selfie camera with night mode and Apple's photonic motor handling, similarity with Apple's MagSafe frill, longer battery duration, and quicker execution. That is notwithstanding the fender bender discovery and Apple's new crisis satellite informing highlight. The majority of the photography and videography upgrades are emotional changes contrasted with the iPhone 11. Furthermore, the more drawn-out battery duration and extra room are invited redesigns that you'll see consistently. As recently referenced, on the off chance that you go for the 14 Ace, all things considered, you get a new 48-megapixel principal camera, a nearer 3x optical zoom versus the 11 Ace Max's 2x zoom, the unique island rather than the indent, and different updates, like a consistently in plain view. The main concern: The iPhone 14 setup incorporates an adequate number of changes to legitimize the overhauling of the iPhone 11. Yet on the off chance that your telephone is still looking great and you're happy with it, introduce iOS 16 and clutch it for one more year. Smash the like button if you're enjoying this video. iPhone 14 versus iPhone XS, XS Max XR. If you bought the iPhone XS, XS Max, or XR at launch, that means your phone is roughly 4 years old and may be starting to feel sluggish. That alone makes a strong case for upgrading, but there's plenty more to gain. Compared to the iPhone XS, the iPhone 14 provides 6 hours of additional battery life, according to Apple's estimates. In addition to everything new in the iPhone 14, specifically, you'll also get other upgrades Apple has added to the iPhone over the past few years. Those include 5G support, more storage. Again, you get 128 gigabytes versus 64 gigabytes, faster performance, and a better camera. The iPhone XS generation lacks night mode for taking clearer pictures in the dark, and it also doesn't have Deep Fusion, which is Apple's name for its image processing technique that improves detail and clarity in darker environments. The XS's front camera has a lower 7-megapixel resolution compared to the larger and newer 12-megapixel sensor on the iPhone 14. If you're upgrading from an iPhone XR, you'll also get an additional camera with an ultra-wide lens for taking broader group shots for the first time. The iPhone 14 also has a larger 6.1-inch screen compared to the iPhone XS 5.8-inch display. The iPhone XS Max has a 6.5-inch screen, while the XR screen is also 6.1 inches. The design has also changed quite a bit over the past 4 years. Newer models have flat edges, a slightly smaller notch, different finishes, and a new squircle-shaped camera module that replaces the pill-shaped rear camera cutout. So your phone will not only feel more modern, but it'll look newer too. The bottom line. If you have an iPhone XS, XS Max, or XR, it's worth upgrading. You get a noticeable boost in camera quality, battery life, and performance among other areas. iPhone 14 versus iPhone X. The iPhone X is about 5 years old, which means it will not only feel more modern, but it'll look newer too. The bottom line. If you have an iPhone XS, XS Max, or XR, it's worth upgrading. You get a noticeable boost in camera quality, battery life, and performance among other areas. iPhone 14 versus iPhone X. The iPhone X is about 5 years old, which means it probably feels slow, and its battery life isn't what it used to be. With an iPhone 14, you'll notice a major upgrade in both categories, as well as design, improved durability, connectivity, and camera quality. Let's start with performance. The iPhone X runs on a much older A11 Bionic chip that's now 5 years old, while the iPhone 14 runs on Apple's A15 Bionic processor. The iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max run on Apple's newer A16 Bionic chip. Both new processors are way ahead of the A11 chip, which only has a 2-core neural engine compared to the A15 Bionic's 16-core neural engine. The iPhone's neural engine powers tasks that rely on machine learning and artificial intelligence, which are becoming a bigger part of the iPhone experience. Things like app suggestions in the app library and Apple's Translate app rely on machine learning to function, which indicates that the iPhone X may struggle to keep up with newer capabilities. The iPhone X also has a dual-lens camera similar to that of the iPhone XS, meaning it's missing the iPhone 14's camera hardware improvements in addition to night mode, Deep Fusion, and the ability to control depth of field and blur levels in portrait mode. Like the iPhone XS, You're only getting a 7-megapixel front camera compared to a 12-megapixel selfie camera on Apple's newer phones. Apple's 5-year-old iPhone also has shorter battery life, with Apple estimating it should last for 13 hours when playing back video compared to 20 hours on the iPhone 14. The iPhone 14's 6.1-inch screen is bigger than the 5.8-inch display on the iPhone X. And it should also be brighter since it can reach 800 nits of max brightness compared to the iPhone X's 625 nit screen. The iPhone 14 supports Dolby Atmos and spatial audio playback, while the iPhone X just has stereo playback. That's probably not a deal breaker, but might be crucial if you watch a lot of videos on your phone without headphones. And of course, there's the benefit of getting car crash detection. Apple's new emergency SOS messaging via satellite option, better water resistance, up to 6 meters for 30 minutes versus 1 meter, 5G support, more storage space, ceramic shield for the display, a refreshed design, and the option to use MagSafe accessories on the iPhone 14. The bottom line: if you have the iPhone X, it's time to upgrade. The iPhone 14 will feel new in just about every way, from the camera to performance, battery life, and the way it looks and feels. However, that doesn't mean the iPhone 13 series holds the most ideal choice for everybody. I separated every one of the models available so you can conclude which iPhone model best suits your requirements. Thanks for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Subscribe to the channel to get more updates. See you soon.